Welcome to Love and Life. I'm Dr. Karen Anderson-Abril here with my co-host,
Pastor Elliot Anderson.
And Love and Life is your place to hear conversations grounded in psych research, psychotherapy,
and biblical truth
to help us thrive in love and life. Hey, Lori, thank you so much for joining us today on the program.
Hi, Karen. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so our topic today is one that has been on my heart for quite a while. Lori and I connected through medical freedom movement here in Indiana. So our audience and our community is very well versed in how Elliot and I feel about certainly the jab, the recent jab, and then more broadly speaking, the over-medicalization of our emotional states. You and I have talked about that as well, to pathologize every fluctuation in our emotional well-being and our emotional responses to normal life changes and grief and trauma and so forth. So there's that overarching concern that we've addressed here on the podcast many times. But Lori, your story with what happened to your daughter kind of takes it to another level. And the way I want to frame this series is that there are even people like us who are like very skeptical, very concerned, want to be very aware and savvy about any kind of medical intervention, and studies that show that drug A, B, and C works. Who's funding that study? Mm-hmm. Is there a huge outsized pharmaceutical influence on our culture? We would argue yes. But even those of us who are skeptical, we have certain drugs that we feel are pretty safe, right? That because they've been used so often and maybe we've taken them for years. And one that falls into this category that I took as a teenager, I would get strep throat every summer for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And even my very skeptical father would say, just get an antibiotic and knock it out. And your story is that the whole notion of just get an antibiotic, that's really not a phrase anyone should be saying. It's not a just get an antibiotic and it's no big deal because it's time and it's been tested for so long. It's
I know. I think we, as a whole society, when you're sick, you run to the doctor, you get something that makes you feel better. Never did I imagine that what I thought was a simple antibiotic would actually be very detrimental to my daughter's health.
Yeah.
I think I'm here for a reason to share this. Mm-hmm. When I look back at the whole story, kind of sounds crazy.
Sure.
Because, I was in the medical field for many years and I never, questioned any antibiotic. And when you think about it, the word antibiotic means against life. So that, very interesting to me.
Interesting.
That, they use this drug, and I don't know if you want me to go into that now as far as the name is a fluoroquinolone drug. The one that my daughter used and took was ciprofloxacin.
Okay.
Cipro is the brand name. And honestly, I learned a lot as we went because generic ciprofloxacin is generic. Cipro is brand name.
Okay.
You cannot sue either if you take a generic, which I didn't know that either. So, not saying that's our first line, but things that I never knew.
Right. And you were in the medical field.
Right. For 20 plus years. X-ray tech first, many years, allopathic side. And then the last half, I was integrative and ended up leaving that and working for integrative doctors. So looking back, there was plenty of things maybe that I questioned early on as far as, why are patients not getting better? I feel like maybe drugs are being handed out way too easy.
Right.
And I think I just I questioned things. Mm-hmm. And early on, I would notice things that were happening around me. And I would wonder, is anybody else not noticing? So it's kind of full circle what happened to my daughter.
And let's get into that. So she was prescribed an antibiotic.
Yes.
And like I said, most of us, including someone like me, who, as we've talked about, and as the Love and Life community knows, Elliot and my father was very skeptical. But he even was like, strep throat, get an antibiotic. You don't take any medication, so your body will respond very quickly. It'll knock it out. And it did. So for those of us who are going, well, but for the most part, they actually are okay. But in some cases, it's not just that it's not going to be okay. Your daughter almost died.
Correct.
So, and she took it for what?
A UTI.
A UTI.
A simple
which many
UTI.
women get. Exactly.
And over the years, we look back that she would get a UTI every, maybe 4 years, 5 years, since she was 12.
Okay.
Which, okay, you get a UTI, you go to the doctor, you get prescribed an antibiotic.
Right.
These are the big guns, the fluoroquinolones, which I didn't know.
And when you say big guns, you mean the ones that are prescribed most frequently?
These
or
are
most powerful?
A life or death drug, which I never knew. They can save you if you're on your deathbed.
Okay.
What's really crazy to me is I had no idea because you and I were probably both prescribed Cipro sometime in our life.
Okay.
It's prescribed for so many things: bronchitis, UTIs, dental procedures,
Sure.
eye procedures in the form of drops.
Oh.
And some people can take them. And what we learned over the course of my daughter's illness and going back, I'm probably going to go back and forth because it is like a puzzle.
Yeah.
She was given in December of 2017. She had a UTI and, something she dealt with in the past.
Yeah.
But it had been a long, 5 years since she had one. 29 years old. She was living in Chicago. Went to get a script, I guess. They gave her ciprofloxacin. By the third day that she took this, she had what was called a catastrophic. We didn't even know it at the time. We had to figure this out. But she had some symptoms that were so numerous and so odd, and they all happened. They kind of snowballed.
Yeah.
So looking back now, and I hope I get a lot of this right, because when it was a blur.
Totally. You're in the middle of a traumatic response to terrifying experience.
Right.
It's very hard to lay down those memories.
So the very first, thing that happened was she was on Lakeshore Drive driving her car. She had a business down there. She was a musician, singer, songwriter at night. And in the day she had a dog walking business, and she was going to a client's house on Lakeshore Drive. I'll never forget, it was January of 2018. So I have to back up a little bit. 2017, right around Christmas time, she got prescribed this drug. January is when she had this, I want to say, neuropathy in the hands. She was driving. She felt tingly. Her legs also. So she almost felt like, and when I asked her, are you okay? Because she's calling me here and I live, not, she called me and said, I think something's going on with me. I don't think I can drive.
Oh.
And I said, are you okay? First of all, are you okay? Where are you at? I'm pulled off to the side of the road. I could barely do it. I had to do it with my knees because of my hands. Gosh. And I said, Dana, I'm going to come get you. And we live 45 minutes away. Yeah. And I ended up, first of all, are you okay? Do we need to call 911? Do we, what do we need to do? I think I'll be okay. But I'm seeing, black dots too in her eyes. So it was so many different symptoms that I'm like, what is this? So in my mind, I'm going, what have you done different? And since, she did not live in the house anymore, I'm like, are you okay? What's been happening the last week? She says, well, I had a UTI. I went to the doctor and I got prescribed this drug. And so right away in my mind, I'm like, could it be this? But we didn't know for sure.
Right.
I ended up going to pick her up. And I remember it was a snowy day. It was very scary. Went to pick her up. We left her car there. I said, we'll get it later. I go, do we need to go to the emergency room? And she goes, no, I think I'm a little better now, but still the tingling and numbness, the eye visual thing.
Yeah.
I ended up taking her back to, Northwest Indiana towards us. And we went right to a clinic that wasn't too far just to get checked out.
Yeah.
And in our minds, I said, do you think, what you're taking, could that, how many days are you in or whatever? 3 days in. Okay. And so I think it was 2 pills a day, day and night that she had to take. So think about it's like 6 pills in and already to us, we thought, well, that has to be correlation with that.
Right.
Well, we went to the clinic. She was seen. I mean, she could walk, she could comprehend everything.
Mhm.
I think it just scared her more so because all
Sure.
these different symptoms. And we see the doctor, and he didn't have any answers. They ran a bunch of tests. But then we kind of thought, could it be this drug? So it was always in the back of our mind. And when I did relay that to the doctor, this is what's different. She had a UTI,
Yeah.
she took this, and now all these symptoms are popping up.
Right.
And when he heard all of them, you could tell he was just like, well, no, when did she take the or it's going to be filtered out of her system. It can't be that. Well, we both just kind of looked like, well, this is the only thing different she's been doing.
Right. Right.
He said, no, that would be long gone. And that would be already filtered out. You may want to, we may want to run tests. If these all come back normal, you may want to see a primary and start looking into, and then he started saying like Sorgens, which I didn't know what that was at the time, MS, maybe Lyme. So he was rattling off all these things. And in my mind, I just kept thinking, well, why not look into this? But I thought, okay, right now we're just going to get her better.
Yeah.
So that was January of 2018. And she ended up getting worse. Things snowballed.
So she stayed on the medication, obviously, because she was
she stopped that because
she did
6 pills in. Now, Karen, there's hindsight. We met so many people along the way as our story progresses, but one pill has done this to people.
Oh my gosh.
One pill. There's a book, Bitter Pills, by Stephen Fried, and he was a bestseller author. I have it with me, but his wife, it was one pill, and that's how he starts off the book. It took just one pill.
Oh my gosh.
Now, I think she's still not better. That was 1998 when it was published. And he talks about, not being believed. And so going forward, and I'm probably getting too far backward, but it's kind of like a puzzle.
Yes. And yeah.
We ended up leaving there that day, and we thought, okay, the worst is over, maybe.
Sure.
You never know.
You're just like, yeah.
We ended up in that whole, after January, I would say like 3 months, she continued to get worse and worse. She started losing weight, could not eat certain foods, felt sick. And when you think about it, what this drug does, and sometimes certain antibiotics that are very strong, they destroy the gut microbiome. Right. I'm probably saying that wrong, but
no, microbiome, because they destroy the good bacteria.
Correct.
That we need.
Yes.
Is that correct?
They destroy everything in its path, including good bacteria.
Okay.
Well, okay, so that's January up until March. And then her younger sister, I have 2 daughters. Her younger sister, Kelly, was getting married, and Dana was supposed to stand up as, the maid of honor. And she didn't know if she could possibly do it because she didn't feel well. She ended up moving with us.
So at this point, she can't walk dogs anymore.
Yeah, she had to give that up.
She couldn't perform at this point.
There were so many side effects.
So we're like, it was January when this first, and then now we're in June or
it kept snowballing each month.
So no more pills have been taken.
No more.
Still trying to figure out what the heck's going on. And of course, every time you go to a doc, it has nothing to do with that antibiotic. That's perfectly safe. It couldn't be that. It has to be something else that she's dealing with.
Right. In that January, meeting with the doctor, and I don't want to say it killed your spirit about even mentioning that, but we were both like, all right, we got to figure this out. We were kind of on our own.
Right.
And it was so disturbing to me because I did not want to go back to somebody else, but I go, what are we going to do if she gets worse?
Sure.
So right away we are researching, you have to be your own advocate because, okay, she was fine until this happened. And so we started, researching and looking online. And I know they say you're not supposed to read or Google your symptoms or anything. But when we did, guess what stood out at us was fluoroquinolones have numerous black box warnings. And we're like, okay, what do we do now? So when I look back, Dana continued to get worse each month from January. Okay, this happened December. And I'm like, how is this possible? she's getting worse. And actually, I started noticing, and it's weird, only because I was in the health field.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I started noticing some very disturbing changes with her appearance too.
Oh my goodness.
And what I learned with the fluoroquinolones, they do deep mitochondrial damage.
Oh my gosh.
We're talking DNA damage. They have a fluoride molecule on them that can cross the blood-brain barrier. It can destroy nerves.
Sure.
It can damage muscles. It causes all kinds of visual disturbances, hallucinations. Anyway, I'm going like so vast, but I do have the FDA readout too, because I started printing. I saw a lot of warnings.
Right.
One of them was the actual warning letter that supposedly went out to all doctors in 2016.
Because enough complaints had happened.
Correct.
And do you know when the black box warning was put on?
I believe that was 2016 on that one. But when I look back, there might have been more.
And I'm quite sure that when she was prescribed this, her doctor did not sit down and list off the possible side effects.
Correct.
So she did not have true informed consent. I'm quite sure he did not list off the fact that there's a black box warning.
Correct. And little did I know too, because I feel like, okay, I've taken this before. I think it was for bronchitis many years ago. And some people can truly take the drug and not have anything happen. But there's a lot of doctors that believe you had something going on in that mitochondrial level, maybe a fatigue, because those are your powerhouse cells in your body.
Yes.
So some people may be tired, or they may have other symptoms. They never piece it back.
They wouldn't piece it back, because if you have a UTI, you're thinking, well, my immune system's really flared up trying to take care of this UTI. So of course I'm going to be tired and fatigued. You're going to give a million other explanations for why you're having that response. And yet it would be, even from someone who goes, oh, I took it and I was fine. No, you probably weren't.
Correct.
And who knows if, like you said, on the cellular level, we don't know the damage. That might show up 10 years, 20 years later.
Correct.
We don't know. But for some, like Dana, it's an immediate response and like debilitating to the point where it's not getting better 6 months later, a year later, and it keeps going.
You know, and it was to the point where we were so worried because it depletes collagen too.
So you're seeing her like have aging skin kind of?
Yeah, very aging. Certain things she ate because it destroyed all the, good bacteria. She was having rashes, and I have pictures. It's weird. I didn't want to take these pictures because, I thought, oh, it's not, it's to me as a mom. And honestly, she would break out in red splotches all over. And I do have pictures of them and, that I can share with you if you want to see them. But it was very disturbing. It depletes collagen. It depletes magnesium. It does so many things cellular level, which I learned as I went because I was forced into this. That was my daughter. I was doing anything to get her better. But it got to the point where she looked like a cancer patient.
Oh my gosh.
And then she ended up saying, I can't, when I eat, my stomach, I just feel like I'm not digesting correctly. And
it wasn't.
I know it did so many things. We started thinking maybe, because of course we're on there, Googling stuff, which I know you're not supposed to do, but of course we did. And it says right on there, it can cause gastroparesis, which is the slowing of food out of the stomach. Because what happens is what I learned, the vagus nerve, which we later learned that Dana had a severely damaged vagus nerve. There's two nerves that run from your brain all the way down. Vagus means, I think in Latin, something wandering. So it goes from your brain all the way down to your large intestine. What it does is it spits out blood flow with nerves to make things work, like to make your stomach, they call it peristalsis, where it's just constantly doing this. Well, this drug damages nerves and tendons and muscles. It slowed everything down. So in turn, we learned she was not digesting food.
Sure.
Didn't have a bowel movement. One time we were like recording things a little bit, and I wish I would have journaled more, but boy, we were in a blur. Absolutely. And when I look back now, I do forget certain times and things that this was going on. But she didn't have a bowel movement for like almost 2 weeks. And so we were scared. And then we're like, do we take her in? We knew we probably weren't going to get the right help.
Right.
because you're dealing with something that a lot of, doctors will not even admit. And I don't blame all, but I think they're not getting the message from the manufacturers to seriously say, hey, you cannot prescribe this to, everyone. It's not a one size fits all.
Well, and for all there's so many different.
I know.
That they could have picked.
Genetics.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, they could have went.
There's so many different.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So why would they go to this big gun, as you put it, the one that's known with a black box label? I'm sure there are some that don't have.
You're correct. And what we learned along the way, there was much more milder.
Right. For
drugs.
UTI, I don't feel like you would need such a powerhouse of a
And I think
drug.
it's that just misinformed of how dangerous these drugs are. So
why would the doctor not know of a black box warning if there's another antibiotic he could prescribe that doesn't have a black box warning?
I don't know if advertising to them, maybe their practice that this one will knock things out. You won't see patients again because it's so strong. It's going to knock it out.
Or was the pharmaceutical rep in his office last week whining and dining him and leaving samples?
I know.
I mean, I just can't.
There is a disconnect. There's a major disconnect with the manufacturers who know that this drug is dangerous, but they give it for everything. And during that whole time that she was sick, and I'm talking, she was, once that snowballed into.
So she's living at your house now?
Yes.
She can't even stand up in her sister's wedding.
She did, believe it or not. You know what? She ended up being in the rehearsal area the whole night, which was enclosed. Because the lights that the DJ used, she had so many visual things going on. She goes, I have to go sit back there because, and thank God, honestly, that because she got to stand up. This is where I'm going to lose it, but she got to stand up in her sister's wedding, but she wasn't really there. She wasn't in the moment.
No.
And end up sitting in this room while we're out, trying to have a good time. In the pictures of the wedding too, when I look back now, it's kind of painful to look at them because it didn't look like her.
Right.
In her face, in her, losing all that weight. And she wasn't a big girl anyway. I think at her top weight, she's like 125. She got down to like 94 pounds. She did. She looked like anorexic.
That's terrible.
She looked like a cancer patient to us. And it's really strange because I do look back at those pictures like, it can't be possible. But she disappeared before our eyes, basically. 29 years old, in the prime of her life.
Yeah.
And you hear this a lot because there are a lot of young women that are prescribed this because, young women get UTIs a lot more often, I believe, than even men. But what's scary is that a lot of men have been injured too. And we found this out later, which I'll get to, but for prostate. This is for anybody out there that, has husbands or loved ones that are, male, they give this like candy for prostate. And there have been many men injured this way.
A few years ago, I started having trouble falling asleep. And I started taking melatonin because I thought it was a natural way to try to relax myself, calm myself down, and go to sleep. But it turns out that as a hormone supplement, melatonin can disrupt our other hormones and we can build up an immunity to it. So when we started partnering with the wellness company, I was super excited to try their melatonin-free sleep aid called Restful Sleep. It includes passion flower, chamomile, valerian root, among other herbs and natural ways to help calm us down and get us ready to go to bed. I've been using it for a couple months now, and Restful Sleep helps my mind and body quiet themselves and ease into sleep. If you've ever had insomnia, you know how brutal it is. The wellness company's Restful Sleep can help. Head over to twc.health/lovelife and enter promo code LOVELIFE at checkout for 15% off your entire order. That's twc.health/lovelife and promo code LOVELIFE for 15% off your entire order. So she has her health decimated. She has to move in with her parents at 29. So her career is on hold. Her
Yep.
singer-songwriting career is on hold. She can't.
Her band members were waiting for her. I mean,
Oh
they
my
had, honestly, they were like featured on XRT and all that.
Really?
They
Oh my
had, yeah, they had a
gosh.
liking, a DJ that liked them so much
That's
that featured,
amazing.
and that was all just kind of stopped in its
Right.
tracks.
So that was taken from her. Her ability to be present in her sister's wedding.
Oh
A
my
once in a
gosh.
lifetime event taken from her.
Oh my gosh.
Taken from her. Just
It
taken
was,
from her.
I know. I just sat there like,
And no one's gonna say, oh yeah, maybe it was that drug, because literally you were fine until then. And you
I
had a
know.
UTI, which many women have.
I know.
So during this time, you're getting no answers from the original doc. What are you trying to look for? Some other holistic people now, or sorry, naturopath? Like, can someone help us? 'Cause obviously, like you said, allopathic, which for those who don't know, that was a newer term for me in the last several years.
Okay.
Is your typical Western medicine, is your allopathic docs. And then you go to your integratives or your naturopaths if you want to do an alternative quote unquote route. So I'm sure at this point you're trying to cobble together some sort of experts that could help you, and you're just not getting answers.
No.
So and so where are you? You're like, what's going to happen? Is she just going to die before our very eyes?
I know. She was still Dana, but it was just, we saw her just, appearance.
Well, she had to have been psychologically traumatized and demoralized, and like, is this it? Am I dying?
It was, what? Exactly. It was a fear. And then, looking to me like, am I going to get better? And Dana's very strong. She is very strong, but there was times where she's like, and she told me this one time in this phrase, it's like, I'm not dying, but I'm not living. Yeah. I'm somewhere in there and nobody's listening. Right. She had, friends didn't understand, family didn't understand. And there's a few that really did. And thank you, because you need validation during this. Nobody, a large majority of people didn't believe us. So we felt like we were all alone. Dana stopped having friends. Like at first they were coming by.
Yeah.
And then I think my younger daughters, like some friends came, and I think her appearance, that you could tell in their face, they were like, and so Dana seeing that and knowing how bad she must look.
Right.
Because, as you're going through it, you just don't know like how skinny you're getting or whatever.
Right. Because it's gradual.
Yeah. So a lot of people were saying, she has Lyme. It sounds exactly like Lyme. And of course, doctors were telling us, test for Lyme. So what we did, and I reached out to somebody, unbeknownst to us, how social media is it's like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
You can find out so many great things, and it connects you. And what I used it for was it connected us to worldwide people that were injured from this drug.
Yeah.
Everybody, it was so strange. There were so many different groups on, Facebook where they were injured and they're on there. I'm like, is this real? But we were directed to have her tested for Lyme because they said a lot of her symptoms were pointing in that direction too. So we ended up, even though in my heart, there was no reason, I think, she did testing, and the one lab that comes back, it's a blood test, that was not even questionable for Lyme. But yet I thought, as a mom, I got to do everything I can. Let's go through everything to rule out everything. So what we did, there was a group called Floxed Hope, and Lisa Bloomquist from Colorado. This happened to her. She was a runner, and the same thing happened to her. And she was right back. I asked her a question on there, on Messenger, got right back to me. She said, maybe rule out Lyme, but this is something more. And we were right on there, what she was saying, what we thought. So we ended up going on, they said there's doctors that will look at both. And it's called, there's a term now, FQAD, which is fluoroquinolone associated disability. Now I've heard in the last year that they are going to make that an ICD code. This is how prominent it is.
What does ICD mean?
Oh, it means like you'll turn it into your insurance. Every condition has a code, a number.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Got it.
This is finally getting the recognition in the coming year or two. FDA is finally, saying this is what's happening. I mean, they're acknowledging it finally.
People.
So, and this is, mind you, this is before the whole COVID thing.
Yeah.
So she told us there was a specialist down in North Carolina that, okay, say it's not Lyme. If it's not Lyme, he can help her with this FQAD now.
And this is this woman you found, the runner from
Colorado.
West. Okay. And she called it Floxed.
Yeah, it's called Floxy Hope. And I should explain that a little bit. A lot of the drugs that are fluoroquinolones.
Yeah.
Now, there's over 60 names of these drugs. Now, ciprofloxacin, levofloxacin, Levaquin, which is the brand name. They're all in this group, but those are the most commonly prescribed.
Okay.
But there are like 60 names that can be the same type of drug. Yeah. She told us, this doctor, you should get it ruled out the Lyme.
Mm-hmm.
And even friends and family, they were thinking, well, it was more better for them to swallow the Lyme principle than this fluoroquinolone.
So you're telling me that friends and family, because you mentioned that they didn't really believe you, meaning when you would present this as, we think it's an adverse reaction to this antibiotic she took, they would not believe that.
It was too much for them.
They just trusted those antibiotics so much.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I took that, no problem. I'm fine.
Mm-hmm. So...
And there's a story that kind of connects with Dana's thing because, I'm forward again to myself, but we took her to this doctor in North Carolina, and she could hardly sit up then. This is like July. So this was, the end of July. We're trying everything we can to rule out stuff. Even though in the back of our minds, we thought it's got to be this drug. So we go down there, he meets, and he said, yes. Mm-hmm. And we had her, she could still sit up at that time. But she was so weak, it was so strange. We couldn't fly. Certain noises, it was like this hypersensitivity that's in there in the FDA report too. Noises and things.
Sure.
With the brain, with the central nervous system, with this drug, what it does. She couldn't fly. We had to go in our own car. So we get down there. The doctor says, oh, this lab right here, because they did a lot of preliminary things before we went, just by not Zoom, but at the time Zoom was just coming into play later.
Yeah.
Send this in. And they did a consult on the phone, and we get done. And he goes, well, this particular lab, I wouldn't even she doesn't have Lyme. And I thought I kind of felt that, but of course we needed to get this confirmed.
Right.
And I said, well, okay. We think it could be this drug. And we got your name from this, doctors. They would put up some doctors' names in the US that you could actually possibly get help. They must have submitted their name to them.
Yeah.
And when I said, well, we think this could be the drug. And he goes, well, I'm not sure about testing for that or anything. It was like, there was no plan. And I'm sure he could tell my frustration after driving so far.
No kidding. I
go, so this fluoroquinolone toxicity is what it's called, actually. You won't be able to help her for that, or what do we do? And honestly, hindsight, that was the very first stages of, in my mind, we're not going to get help for this. Because I thought, well, your name, and I told him, I go, your name is in this database that you could help us maybe with the fluoroquinolone. And honestly, I think he got really PO'd at me because I said, oh my gosh, we came all this way. It was just very, very disheartening.
Well, so he had helped someone because someone put his name in the database.
Or did he do it I hate to say this, just to get business? I don't know. And it sounds terrible on my part, but boy, we were, by that time.
Down there and pay for his services and then to be told, no.
So we end up leaving there. Dana was very, oh my gosh,
it's so disheartening.
We come back, and that was the end of July. Then August is where things got really scary for her. She ended up losing all ability to really walk. Neuropathy, feeling like her feet were constantly pins and needles.
Oh my gosh.
We ended up she went from sitting on the couch, kind of laying back on the couch. Now that we look back, the instability, they call it cranial instability, because it was weakening all her, nerves.
So she's having a hard time holding her head up.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So she would be in a position of laying back. So it went, honestly, when I look back, she's on the couch just watching TV because that was her day. She couldn't go out. She couldn't work. Ends up bedridden. And from there, she really didn't get up for so long. I mean, just use the bathroom and, of course, help from me and her father. Our daughter was already married out of the house. I just saw her, wasting away.
Oh gosh.
And our younger daughter, like, actually it takes its toll because you see a vibrant girl, just deteriorating. And she had started having trouble breathing.
Oh my gosh.
And what we now know later on,
Mm-hmm.
the vagus nerve that
Mm-hmm.
we didn't know at the time that was damaged. We find this out later. Could not even her diaphragm, the blood goes off of that nerve.
Sure.
And tells your lungs to expand, breathe, involuntary things that happen normally, like you and I sitting here.
Right.
Her brain wasn't firing the right.
Gosh.
It was horrible. So she started like having air hunger, they call it. And I'm looking up, that's in there too. The air hunger
in
the nerves, in the nerves. I said, you know what, honestly, I go to my husband, I said, she's getting worse. She's not getting better. Okay, she doesn't have Lyme. What are we going to do? She could only eat a few foods without breaking out in this rash. We incorporate getting one of those bedside toilets, which I'm like, is this really happening? I mean, it was like, she couldn't really get up to go to the bathroom. She had long, beautiful hair. We were actually thinking of cutting it because we had to like wash her hair, hang, like I had this makeshift ladder that I had to use and hang. I had to order Amazon, like this kit, which I was like, what are we doing here? But it looked like a little blow up little pool that you put the patient's neck. It almost reminds you like of a hair washing thing that you can do it in the bed, which I didn't work with a lot of patients bedside. I was more, with x-ray and everything. I didn't have actual patient care. We had to hang this thing in with the water and wash her hair, actually it started out every few days, but then it got so hard for her that we were like once a week doing it and she just felt miserable. So we had to order things to help us. It was terrible because we weren't in the hospital at all, right. And we weren't getting the right, help. I felt like we were being gaslit, not believed, not validated.
Right.
But all these people are suffering worldwide. This is real.
Yeah.
And so we ended up getting some help a little bit. Like we had, and this is honestly when COVID started coming into play. Because, I'm going ahead of myself again, but, 2018. Oh, yeah. So that was around August that she started losing, and it was hard for her to talk even. Gosh. And I know this is crazy, but
horrifying.
So, kind of trying to explain this to family and stuff like, well, how could a drug be doing this now when she took it late last year? But that whole 2018, when I look back, it was just a snowball and it got worse and worse. And when I started reading things, I mean, I pulled up that FDA report and right in there in print, bold print, it says patients, after taking the fluoroquinolone may develop symptoms and adverse effects 9 months to 14 years. 14 years after ingestion. I wish I would have had that paper, starting out and just showed the doctor, but honestly, I don't think I would have been believed then. And I don't mean that in a horrible way, but it's just, there's a major disconnect. And I think the manufacturers have suppressed this it's been going on for so long. And I wish I would have known that. And it makes me angry a lot too, because that book that I told you about, was 10 years before this even happened. So
it had been known.
Oh.
And nothing had been done about it.
Right. So
and just again, a public service announcement. I was just listening to, I think it was Joe Rogan with Dr. Mary Talley Bowen, and they were talking about the number of drugs that are recalled. Once they have been out there, been prescribed, been used, everyone's thinking they're safe and effective, and it's upwards of a third. So gosh. You go to a doctor, you're turning your life over into their hands. And clearly, many are so, as my father told me back in the 70s, in bed with the pharmaceutical corporations. You're not going to get a straight answer oftentimes. And clearly, when you said, by the way, could it possibly? No. Immediately, no, that couldn't be it.
Yeah.
And you're like, the FDA has a report saying it absolutely could be this.
I know. And I didn't come across that till later.
Right.
I wish I would have right away, but
I don't think they would believe you anyway.
I know. So that was like, well, July was the Lyme, diagnosed. No, it's not Lyme.
Right.
And honestly, like to tell family and friends, like it's not Lyme. So, no, I'm not crazy. It's not Lyme.
Well, I'm sure they started saying, oh, it must be psychological.
Oh, and that comes into play, of course. But so she got worse and worse. By August, the end of August of 2018, the breathing had gotten so very bad. Her color to me, it was like that white greenish. So we got really super nervous and ended up going to a neurologist. And honestly, a lot of people that are injured, there's a pattern. They see an average of 15 to 17 doctors, before they just they throw in the towel. Well, we were ready to throw in the towel after two or three, because actually it was like a mind thing too, where you're so gaslit that nothing you're seeing or nothing we're going through is really happening. So she ended up having trouble breathing. That's when I kick in, like, I need to have her somewhere in case something happens.
Right.
So we ended up, by the advice of some of the people on there. I mean, it's weird that you turn to people that are going through it.
You turn to the Facebook group.
Oh my gosh. People that are actually know. Yeah. Exactly. So they said, see a neurologist, maybe they'll do like a EMG where they actually do the shocking. I don't know if you ever heard that, where they hook you up to electrical, electrodes. And it actually does shock nerves and stuff to see, is there nerve damage? Is there, because her breathing, her vocal cord, it was so strange, all the different vast symptoms. She had this, we went to the neurologist appointment. Of course, I get the stare, and I thought, do I even bring it up or just let him do all the tests?
Yeah.
And tell us what he thinks, but I did have that FDA report.
At that point you did.
Okay. And I'm not sure he received it in a way that was good for us, but I just said, we think this is what happened, but he wanted to know from her. It was hard not to interject sometimes, but she couldn't even talk.
Well, right.
At this point, I had to get like a POA for her. I mean, you talk about having to get like your own power of attorney for your daughter that's 29. So I was able to answer questions because a lot of times she couldn't even talk, by that time she was in a wheelchair. I failed to say that too. In that month, she got so bad we had to get a wheelchair because she could barely stand. And so we went and all the tests. And here's what's really sad, that people are suffering from this. Most of the tests come back normal. There's no test for this. Now I've heard recently that there's a fiber nerve muscle biopsy that they can do now. There's a lot that is changing and for the better for people that are suffering from this. But at the neurologist, all of her tests came back okay. And he said, I'm going to do one more thing. I think maybe with her breathing and the air hunger, let's do a pulmonary function test. Now, honestly, that was where the tide turned, because he did the script and he goes, you may be able to get over there in the next day or so. Call the hospital. They do it at the hospital. So we came as outpatient, and it was a late appointment. They could only get us in like at 3:30. And I'll never forget this. It was a Friday, and me working at a hospital for many years, things like kind of not get put on hold, but if they're a non-emergency, things don't get looked at until Monday.
Sure.
So I go to the hospital. Now, this is where I'd worked prior. I was since with the integrative doctor and stuff. And what the whole silver lining in this whole story is that I took an early retirement to help her. I was in that position. There was no other way. I could not get somebody in there and try to work. So I was able to take an early retirement, get my pension, all that. But this particular hospital, the respiratory technician remembered me. And I think he did me a really big favor, because when he did her test, and you're in this box, there's a few different tests you do, and you blow into certain tubes, and they have you say things and try to vocal things. When we were done, I started getting very nervous because I was waiting outside, and he said, "Mrs. Wool, can you come in here?" And he has the paper, the actual report in his hand. Now, you never really see a report like me. I'm her mom, but he's folding it, and he said, "I need to let you know that this won't get looked at today, but I have a feeling you may be back over the weekend." This is how serious her results came back. And so that was the first time, and honestly, I lost it then because it was the first test that showed something majorly wrong.
And someone taking you seriously,
Oh
finally,
my gosh.
right?
Oh my gosh.
Like you're terrified because you're like, okay, you're saying things that are very, very scary, but at least you are acknowledging.
Oh my gosh. I almost felt like hugging him. But here I am. He's giving me the worst news in the world that something is majorly wrong.
But he's acknowledging that it is severe and serious and that this is not normal.
It scared me. And, I couldn't tell Dana that because she's so sick. And, she was not in that area where I was when he told me that. But here we are leaving the hospital. He almost said, "I think maybe you need to go right to the ER, with this kind of reading." And I'm like, "What do I do?"
Yeah. Do I need to do that?
He goes, "Just, keep her comfortable, whatever." I'm like, "She can't breathe," so we go home, and me and my husband, honestly, we were like, "What do we do?" That very night, she had such respiratory distress.
Like she's gonna suffocate.
So we, instead of calling 911, which honestly I probably should have, but we only live 5 minutes from the hospital. So we got her in the car. Honestly, my husband's picking her up. She can't even. So we get there, and she was hospitalized there. They kept her when they saw the report. They finally, then it gets read because it's an emergency.
So he gave you a copy of the report?
Yeah, and I had it. He said, "Bring this with you if you do end up at the hospital." I think he knew it was coming either that night. And honestly, it was that night. And we get there, and of course I got to, every time I have to tell the story, you're looked at with a gazing of the eye, but that on paper, we finally had something that was saying, she's pulmonary distress. And the way I understood it, I don't know much about the pulmonary function of that test. That pulmonary function test is, when you breathe in and then you breathe out, the export, I guess it's called the exhalation, the effusion of what you push out. It was like she needed to be I don't know what they do for that, but she was given oxygen right away. She tried to explain it's not all the time, but it's she just feels like she has this air hunger, can't get enough breath in. Gosh. And now when I look back, it is, the weakening of the muscles and the tendons, and then that long nerve doesn't fire right. And it just doesn't do the inhalation properly or the exhalation. It slows everything down. So she ended up being hospitalized. They kept her for a week there, doing so many tests, it's just crazy. I mean, when I look back now, I felt like there's nothing, nobody knows anything really about this. So we felt very isolated and very, what do we do? There's no cure for this. Right. And what we started seeing and the comfort we got from these groups online, and believe me, they were worldwide, were that time was a factor to where you may heal, you may not, but it's just time. And I go, but if you can't breathe, what do you do?
You're not going to have any more time. Yeah.
Stayed there for a week, and they ended up releasing her. And this is the kicker too. A generalized muscle weakness. That was it. That was her diagnosis. But they would never acknowledge, because I did say a few more times that we think it's the drug. They started going the myasthenia gravis route.
I don't even know what that is.
It is It's a condition. It affects mainly women under 40 and men over 60, which I don't get that.
Yeah.
It is the slow progression of weakening of muscles, including lung. And it's not curable. And then they told us they're going to roll out that. They're going to roll out MS.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people go that route too. Instead of Lyme, they'll do the MS because a lot of these symptoms are consistent with that. Fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome. And when I look back now, I'm going, is all those conditions, because there are so many prescriptions for these drugs.
Mm-hmm.
In a few years' time, in 1 year's time, 22 million prescriptions that go out.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so then you have these conditions popping up.
Right.
Chronic fatigue. And
Right.
if you look in the FDA report, they can overlap and they look the same. So I really wonder, there are people out there right now getting diagnosed with these drugs still. And they don't even know. Honestly, they may not know until further down the road, because some people, it comes out with shoulder replacement with, the number one thing on the pamphlet is severed Achilles tendon, which is in your calf. It's your calf muscle. And there's a tendon that runs along that muscle. And they say these drugs can snap it. So that's the only, bad thing that was put in the pamphlets at first. Now I've noticed they've added more things, glucose disturbances, aortic aneurysms, CNS symptoms, central nervous system. And in the FDA, it's all there in the report. But they won't list all of those. And they may, right now, maybe they are going to do it. I don't know. I just feel like there's so many symptoms that it's just when you tell people from the time of ingestion until some of these things take place, they never trace it back. There are some people that have surgeries that they hang these drugs as a prophylactic to prevent infection. And I've met several, because we went to conferences after a while with people that were injured, and one lady had something done with her bladder. She was just having some kind of bladder repair, woke up from surgery, and months down the road started having very unusual things happening.
Mm-hmm.
Never pieced it together and never even thought to ask, did I have one of these drugs in my IV at the time? And sure enough, that's how she found out what happened to her.
Well, you said, I think, that it can be 9 months to 14 years before you have
That's in their own FDA.
In the FDA's own report about
their letter to physicians in 2016 stated, you may have this up until, but honestly, it's longer, Karen. It is longer for some people. They are still ill. Some will never get out of bed. Some have passed. I mean, there's people that have passed from one pill. I mean, it's.
So when you went to these conferences, and these are all people who've been injured, and they're coming together and sharing their stories. So you're seeing people in wheelchairs. You're seeing people who that
have been fighting for a long time.
Young people who look 30 years older than they should.
They're bringing their stories to the FDA, and they're trying to get changes in the prescribing. And after that episode at the hospital,
she's been told she's got this generalized
muscle weakness.
Yeah, so she just didn't work out enough. That's what happened. She should have been.
And then, were you never a smoker? Were you, because of her pulmonary thing that came back? Okay, of course. You might have had asthma in your past, smoking.
Mm-hmm.
And no, she did not. She was perfectly healthy. That's why, no matter what I would say, and at some point I had to be quiet because she is 29, but she could hardly, I'm speaking for her, which some people didn't like that, but I was her voice then, literally her voice. Yes. And after she got released from that hospital, there was one doc that came up. He was like one of the pulmonary, doctors. And he said, there's definitely something wrong. You may be onto something, which, not saying you're right about the drug, but I felt like it was a warning to us. And I look at certain people along our journey, I think, he was one of those angels that, just like Lisa Bloomquist, who directed us, get it done. But he said, if I were you, I would get her to one of the major Chicago hospitals.
Love and Life with Dr. Karen and Pastor Elliot is produced by Tim May and executive producer Dr. Karen Anderson-Abel. For more information about Love and Life, please go to loveandlifemedia.com.